You never realize how heavy something is until you set it down. You spend years, maybe even decades, carrying the weight of a friendship, a family bond, a job, a persona, a promise, all the while telling yourself, this is loyalty, this is love, this is who I am. But somewhere, just beneath the surface of your survival instincts, a quiet whisper asks, but at what cost? Imagine this. You walk into a room filled with the people you love most. They smile, they speak, they share stories. But what if you stood completely still and said nothing? How long would it take before they noticed you weren't speaking? How long before they noticed you at all? Now, what if you left? Would they follow? Would they reach out? Would anything change? That moment, when you walk away, is not just a test of others. It's a revelation of reality, a tearing of the veil. And often, what it reveals is more unsettling than comforting. That many things we thought were built on love were built on convenience. That loyalty was transactional. That presence was conditional. And yet, walking away is often seen as weakness, as giving up, as failure. But what if it's the only way to truly see? What if clarity, peace, and truth don't come when we cling, but when we release? You've been taught that endurance equals virtue, that staying is proof of strength, that if you walk away, you're abandoning others. But what if staying is how you abandon yourself? Ask yourself, why do I hold on so tightly to things that drain me? Who am I trying to prove my worth to? What do I fear will happen if I finally let go? What if, just beyond your fear, is freedom? We chase closeness, approval, inclusion, often at the cost of our own intuition. And yet, the ancient philosophers and mystics whispered a deeper truth, that detachment is not abandonment, but alignment. That walking away doesn't mean giving up, it means coming home. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Sometimes walking away is how we awaken, how we interrupt the unconscious pattern, how we stop calling chaos normal and trauma loyalty. And so here stands the great paradox. What if the truth, the real truth about who loves you, who needs you, who sees you, only reveals itself after you're gone? This is not about revenge. This is not about silence games or emotional manipulation. This is about truth. Because sometimes silence reveals more than words, and absence speaks louder than presence. Now, before we go further, ask yourself, if I disappeared today, what would remain? What would fall apart? What would finally be seen clearly, maybe for the first time? The question is not, do I have the courage to stay? The real question is, do I have the courage to walk away just long enough for the truth to reveal itself? Let's explore what keeps us trapped and why letting go feels like dying even when it's saving your soul. So why don't we walk away, even when everything inside us screams to leave? Because we are not just fighting logic, we are wrestling with deeply embedded psychological programs, written long before we could speak. And often, what looks like love or loyalty on the surface is really just the fear of abandonment, wrapped in noble language. We grow up learning to equate attachment with survival. As children, we depend on others for food, warmth, validation. When connection is threatened, we panic. And unless we heal it, that panic follows us into adulthood, disguised as devotion. Carl Jung taught that the shadow, the hidden, unconscious parts of ourselves, often contains the very things we most fear confronting. Walking away threatens the illusion of safety. It drags the shadow into the light and asks us, what if I'm alone? What if I'm not loved? What if they never chase after me? But here's the darker truth. Many stay, not out of love, but because of an unconscious bargain. If I stay long enough, suffer deeply enough, give everything I have, then maybe I'll be worthy. This is not love. This is trauma reenactment. Schopenhauer believed that much of human suffering arises from attachment, from our desperate clinging to things, people and illusions that are bound to change or betray us. He wrote that man can indeed do what he wants, but he cannot will what he wants. In other words, we are often trapped by desires we don't even choose. Nietzsche took it further. He suggested that we often remain in systems of suffering because they provide meaning. That pain, when tied to a narrative of identity, I'm the fixer, I'm the strong one, I'm the forgiver becomes not just tolerable but sacred. And this is the hidden trap. We confuse endurance with virtue. But let's be brutally honest, how? Many times have you stayed in rooms that suffocated your soul because walking out felt like giving up? How many masks have you worn to be palatable, to avoid rejection, to maintain peace? Here's a radical truth. You're not obligated to stay where you are unloved, unseen or misunderstood. You're not responsible for carrying other people's expectations, egos or emotional debts. You are not the savior of their chaos. Viktor Frankl, in The Crucible of the Holocaust, discovered something profound, that meaning cannot be imposed by others, it must be chosen. He wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." But what if changing yourself doesn't mean becoming better, but becoming free? The problem is, society rewards the martyr more than the liberated. The one who sacrifices everything is praised. The one who walks away is judged, especially if you're someone with empathy, compassion, or spiritual leanings. The pressure to stay and heal everything can become your prison. And so walking away becomes an existential crisis. Who am I if I'm not rescuing others? What value do I have if I stop giving endlessly? Will I still be loved if I draw a line? Yet these are not signs of weakness. These are the birth pains of transformation. This inner war between truth and comfort, between loyalty and freedom, is the silent struggle shaping millions of lives. And it goes deeper than relationships. It affects how we show up in careers, beliefs, even in our spirituality. We stay in churches, jobs, ideologies, not because they still nourish us, but because leaving would collapse the narrative we've built around them. And so, the true problem isn't that we're afraid of walking away. We're afraid of what the silence will reveal when we do. Will we find out we were never as loved as we thought? That we gave more than we received? That no one noticed we were gone? Or will we find something even scarier, that when everything falls silent, we finally hear the voice we've spent our whole life avoiding, our own? Now the question burns deeper. What are the unseen forces convincing us to stay long after our soul has already left? Let's pull back the curtain even further. Start small. A subtle tightening in your chest. A glance that lingers too long on the door. Wondering if today might be the day you walk through it and never look back. But you don't. Not yet. Because everything around you whispers stay. Not directly, but in more cunning ways. The sigh of disappointment when you assert a boundary. The guilt-tripping disguised as love. The conditional kindness that only comes when you're useful. You tell yourself it's not that bad. And that's the deadliest sentence of all. Because what doesn't scream often wounds the deepest. The real damage isn't the explosion. It's the erosion. It's the slow leaking of your self-worth. The dulling of your voice. The rearrangement of your priorities around someone else's dysfunction. It's watching your soul take tiny steps backward until one day you don't recognize the shape it makes anymore. Neurologically, the brain adapts to familiar pain. It prefers predictable suffering over unpredictable liberation. This is the default mode network at work, a cognitive system designed to preserve identity, even if that identity is rooted in trauma. You internalize stories like, I am responsible for everyone's happiness. If I speak up, I'll be abandoned. If I walk away, I'll regret it. These aren't just thoughts. They become your operating system. And what's worse, your nervous system. Trained by years of emotional survival, can't tell the difference between safety and silence. So when you try to leave toxicity, your body misreads peace as danger, calm as abandonment. You shake, you second guess, you run back. It's not weakness, it's conditioning. And society reinforces it. People shame you for setting boundaries, but they're your family. They didn't mean it like that. You're being dramatic, so you shrink again. You swallow your truth, and bit by bit, your inner world calcifies into silence. But silence is never empty. It's filled with invisible echoes, and they haunt you. Let's go deeper. This silent self-betrayal doesn't just poison relationships. It seeps into your dreams, ambitions, and how you see the world. You stop applying for things that light you up. You choose partners who reflect your hidden belief, I am not enough. You call it fate. It's not. It's psychological repetition. The longer you stay, the more you become a ghost in your own life. And yet, here's the most insidious part. The person draining you may not even be cruel. They may smile. They may love you in their way. But love that only thrives when you're small is not love. It's control. Walking away doesn't just reveal their truth. It exposes yours. Do you really believe you are worthy of peace? Are you ready to grieve not just the people, but the illusions you've clung to? Because when you leave, it won't just be them you walk away from. You'll have to leave behind the need to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, and the fantasy that if you stay long enough, they'll finally change. The hope that your suffering can buy you love. Let go of that hope. Let it die. Because only in that funeral can your real life begin. And yes, the initial silence will be unbearable. You'll want to go back just to fill the void, but stay in it. Let the silence do its work, because within that quiet, something else begins to speak, truth. And that's when the real miracle begins. You no longer chase validation. You no longer beg for love. You realize that peace was never found in their approval. It was waiting behind your decision to finally choose yourself. But make no mistake, this choice has consequences. People will accuse you of being cold, of changing, of becoming distant. Let them. What they're really saying is, you're no longer controllable. Good. You weren't born to be managed. You were born to be free. And freedom is not polite. It doesn't always come with closure. It doesn't always explain itself. It doesn't apologize for breaking generational patterns. It just walks away, and in doing so, exposes the lies that only thrived in your silence. Now the question is no longer should you leave. It's, are you ready for the fire that truth brings when you do? There will come a moment, quiet, but unmistakable, when something inside you snaps. Not with rage, not with drama, but with clarity. And clarity is rebellion, because in a world that profits from your confusion, your compliance, and your conditioning, there is nothing more revolutionary than knowing exactly who you are and what you will no longer tolerate. This is the moment you stop explaining your boundaries and start embodying them. You begin to realize that love does not demand the erosion of yourself. That loyalty is not the same as self-abandonment. That silence may keep the peace, but it buries the truth. And so the rebellion begins, not in flames, but in a whisper, no more. This isn't the kind of rebellion that burns down bridges recklessly. This is the sacred kind, the one that builds new ground under your feet while the old world collapses behind you. Let's be honest, walking away is not glamorous. It's terrifying. You will tremble. You will grieve. You will feel like you're dying, because in a way you are. The version of you who begged to be seen, who tolerated the intolerable, who contorted themselves into a shape just to fit someone else's idea of enough. That version must die, and when it does, a new self is born, not one who needs to be saved, but one who has become their own salvation. How do you break free? You stop waiting for closure from people who never gave you clarity to begin with. You stop giving people access to you just because they had it in the past. You stop interpreting your worth through the lens of who stays. And you start asking better questions. It's not why don't they love me, but why do I keep seeking love from those who withhold it? Not what did I do wrong, but what part of me thinks I have to earn peace through pain? Not how can I fix this, but why is it my job to carry what broke me? You must understand, this rebellion is not just emotional, it is philosophical. It is existential. Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." This is your moment to make something new, something unshackled, but you must be willing to endure the wilderness. Because after the leaving there is a void, a deafening silence where their noise used to be. You'll question everything. That's normal. It's not regression, it's detox. You are not falling apart. You are shedding everything that was never real. In that void, rebuild, slowly, gently, radically. Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. This is that space. Choose differently this time. Choose people who don't just want access to you, but see you, honor you, respect your no as much as your yes. Let go of the savior complex. Let them fall if they must. You are not their anchor. You are not the rehabilitation center for their unresolved wounds. That job will kill your soul. This rebellion isn't loud. It's consistent. It's not about confrontation. It's about separation. It's not about revenge. It's about resurrection. And when you stop participating in their games, something miraculous happens. They finally reveal themselves, not because you provoked them, but because your absence exposes what your presence protected. You are the mirror, the stabilizer, the emotional glue. And now without you, the illusion unravels. Let it. Walk away not to prove a point, but to protect your peace. And when the voices come, because they will, telling you that you're selfish, dramatic, ungrateful, remember this. Every system resists change. Every manipulator mourns the loss of their control. Every enabler calls boundaries an attack. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you've finally become dangerous to their dysfunction. Good. You weren't born to shrink. You weren't born to apologize for your clarity. You weren't created to live in spiritual or emotional exile for the sake of harmony. Your rebellion is sacred. Let the world call it what it will. Let them misunderstand. Let them mislabel. Because the truth, the real, unfiltered, raw, world-shaking truth, only reveals itself when you walk away. And when it does, you don't just reclaim your life. You become untouchable. You've walked through the fire. Not around it, not above it, but through. You burned for truth, and in that furnace, the lies turned to ash. Now in the silence after the storm, in that place where nothing remains but your breath and your scars, the final truth emerges. It isn't loud. It isn't angry. It doesn't scream, "I told you so." It simply stands unwavering like a mountain. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. This is the truth the world doesn't want you to know, because it changes everything. You don't have to earn love. You don't have to bend into pain to deserve peace. You don't have to wait for someone else to tell you your worth. You are already what you were searching for. This isn't some soft-spoken affirmation or feel-good cliché. This is ontological. This is existential. This is your spiritual DNA. The love, the worth, the validation, they are not destinations. They are your birthright. Schopenhauer once said that happiness is a negative state, the absence of suffering. But now you see, the real liberation isn't just freedom from pain. It's freedom from illusion. You finally see that so many of your sufferings weren't just accidents, they were consequences of believing lies about who you needed to be loved. You contorted, you bled emotionally, you waited for crumbs. Not because you were weak, but because you didn't know. But now you do. Now you understand what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What you thought was fate was just a loop, a script inherited from wounded ancestors, broken systems, and your own unhealed self. You didn't choose the pain, but now you choose whether it continues. And here's the deeper paradox. The more you love yourself, the more alone you'll feel, for a time. Not because you're unlovable, but because self-love clears the room. When you start honoring your needs, many will leave because your healing threatens their comfort. When you start choosing peace over chaos, those addicted to dysfunction will call you cold. When you stop explaining your boundaries, they'll call you hard. And when you finally stop proving your worth, some will call you selfish. Let them. Because that discomfort you feel isn't loneliness. It's spiritual detox. It's the noise leaving your soul. It's the clearing of false attachments, revealing space for something divine. You begin to see that solitude isn't emptiness. It's sacred ground, where God speaks, where truth visits, where new vision is born. You start realizing that the relationships that left you feeling hollow weren't real connections. They were trauma reenactments. You weren't loved, you were used. You weren't seen, you were projected onto. You weren't accepted, you were tolerated for what you gave, not for who you are. And now you stop. You walk, not in bitterness, not in resentment, but in revelation. And as you walk, something shifts. Where once there was the urge to be understood, there is now a peace that says, let them misunderstand. Where once there was desperation for closure, there is now a holy indifference. I am my own closure. And where once you questioned your value based on who left or stayed, now there is a quiet, steady truth pulsing inside you. I am not someone to be chosen. I am someone who chooses. This is the final realization, the ultimate truth. Walking away doesn't mean loss. It means resurrection. It means the end of the false self, the version of you built from wounds, silence, and approval addiction. It means the beginning of your truest self, fierce, sacred, whole. You don't need their validation. You don't need the apology. You don't need to be understood to be free. You only need this, the courage to leave what no longer holds your truth, and the audacity to build a life where truth isn't just known, it's lived. Let it break you open. Let it call you home. You are not broken. You are awakening, and now that you've walked away, the truth has arrived.